Welcome to the Holy Mischief Podcast. Here we shine a light on the hidden gems of Cartersville and Bartow County. Helpers, creators, and everyday heroes spreading love and kindness in extraordinary ways. Think of us as Mr. Rogers for adults, sharing stories that spark hope, joy, and a little bit of holy mischief along the way. Pull up a seat, neighbor. It's time to meet the incredible people making a difference in your backyard. Hey friends, welcome back to the Holy Mischief Podcast. I am so excited today because I have my friend Jessica Mitchum here with us. Say hello, Jessica.
Hey, guys.
Jessica is the director at Recovery Bartow. We're going to talk a lot about that. And we're also going to do something a little different today. Greg, who is our AV director and has been helping to do a lot of the camera work and the editing for the podcast, has a microphone. So beware. Greg is here. Yes. Beware. Greg, I have noticed, has been recording and doing things, and then every so often I can tell he starts to flinch a little bit because he wants to talk so badly. So we're glad to have him. We are here at Georgia Highlands College, where Jessica and I just did a little holy mischief. School is about to start back in about a week or so here, and most of the staff is in meetings. And so we went out and Jessica, tell everybody what we did.
Yeah, so we did some sidewalk chalk. I mean, the sidewalk's a tiny bit wet, but not too bad. Hopefully rain will hold off. And we put a message out on the sidewalk, hoping to encourage people who walk by.
Yeah. It's fun to do holy mischief here because people aren't expecting it. If I do it at the church, people are like, oh, yeah. Yeah. So, Jessica, I like to say that I am a renegade pastor, but professional holy mischief maker.
Okay.
And I see that in you as well, that you are a woman of a lot of different hats that you've worn in the past, and that part of your calling to be at Recovery Bartow is really to spread love and joy. It's not, there's so much more to it than just helping people who are in recovery.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about Recovery Bartow and the work that you do there.
Yeah, so I have been a social worker in Cartersville since 2006, so we're coming on 20 years. And I've just been at Recovery Bartow a little over a year. I served at Good Neighbor for 12 years. And near the end of that, went on a silent retreat, and the Lord, I didn't really have any expectations about the silent retreat, just went because I'd been intrigued for a long time, and got back home and told my husband that the Lord had said it was time to give him Good Neighbor Homeless Shelter back, which was not what I was expecting to come out of that. And so I took a few months and did that and thought, surely the Lord's just going to put me on the bench for, 60 or 90 days and then back to business. That season was a 22-month sabbatical that I did not expect.
Wow.
And so now I'm at Recovery Bartow. When I left Good Neighbor, I think within 60 days, I thought that it was either going to be foster adoption care or recovery addiction work. I was pretty sure it was one or the other of those. And then the Lord said, Jessica, I didn't know this number at the time, but we've got about 11,000 children in Georgia that live in foster adoption care or foster care right now. Right. And almost every single one of them are removed from their home because of drugs and alcohol. And so there's a tree and then there's a root to the tree.
Yeah.
A lot of attention is on the tree right now, and thousands of children in our state that are in care. But we are not doing really very much work on the root of that. There are not many resources available for people who are struggling with substance use, who are trying to find recovery. There are just not a lot of good services available on the ground at all. And so the Lord said, your assignment is the root, because the tree's only going to get smaller when the roots get smaller. Less kids will be in care when more parents can find the help and support and love and that they need. So waited for the door at Recovery Bartow to open. And so I've been there, like I said, about 16 months. The most important thing, if you hear anything about Recovery Bartow, is that the heartbeat of our organization is that everyone else on our staff is in recovery themselves.
Right. So I want to unpack a lot of that.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your story, and a little bit about what recovery looks like for people who don't have that in their immediate circle. Yeah. What are people recovering from, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so at Recovery Bartow, we celebrate that looking endless different ways for people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important part of our culture, is that we don't define what that is. We just support people in whatever they feel like that is for them. And I mean that wholeheartedly. So if that's less than more, we support that. If that's total abstinence from all things, we support that.
Okay.
So we really are walking alongside people who are identifying what it looks like to be more healthy for themselves and encouraging them in that walk and trying to help them find community that wants to walk in that with them, whatever that looks like, in order for them to be safer and more healthy.
Are the majority of the people that you work with, is it substance, alcohol, both?
Good question. So almost everybody in our, not by design, but almost everybody in our community are in recovery from illicit drug use. In Cartersville, I feel like there's a pretty long history of lots of AA meetings. There's been less resources on the ground for illicit drug use recovery. And so everyone on our staff, all 6 of them are in recovery from illicit drug use. But like I said, that's not necessarily purposeful. Maybe it's just meeting what was a little bit more of the unmet need. But we provide some resources and connections for all kinds of recovery. So, I mean, we have calls from family members or individuals who are in recovery just from alcoholism and are looking for those resources. But that's not been the life experience of our staff.
I will say, when I first moved here, I talked to the mayor, police chief, district superintendent, and one of my questions was, what is the biggest need? What is the biggest problem? If you could wave a magic wand, what is it that you would fix in Bartow County? And almost all of them mentioned drug use, very concerned about fentanyl, and just very, very concerned for people who want and need to be in recovery. So I saw it just from talking to people when I first got here, and I felt this huge need to do something, even though I was new, didn't know hardly anyone at the time, and wasn't really sure what I could do. Come to find out, we have an NA group that meets at our church, and was able to speak to someone who helps to lead that up, heard his story, and was just moved by his courage and all of the things that he had to overcome. I don't think people realize the obstacles that are in your way when you have to go through recovery.
I agree with that. To take a step back from what you just even shared, so to just spend 1 minute highlighting the fentanyl problem, even just in our country, much less in our community, here is one info piece on that. So the Federal Drug Administration tracks how much fentanyl comes into the United States of America annually. And I was getting ready to speak to a group a couple months ago and was re-looking at those numbers. In 2024, there are about 340 million people in our country. Last year, the FDA stopped 380 million fatal doses of fentanyl crossing our border. That's more doses than humans live in our country. And that's just the ones they stopped, like just the ones they seized, much less all the doses that came into our country and ended up in the hands of people who are struggling terribly.
Yeah.
So the volume, is terrifying, and the numbers of how many young people right now, fentanyl overdose is the leading cause of young people between ages 18 to 45. It is unbelievable. I mean, if you are living in our community and think that has nothing to do with you, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And then the other piece that, yes, as you talk about how that impacts families, it never, or at this point, and it's only been 16 months, I think maybe the hardest part is just people's unwillingness, just the whispering and the unwillingness for people to talk about it out loud because of the stigma and because of the fear of judgment. And I get it. You have kids in your home. I have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old in my house.
Bless you.
So here's an example. I will own that if I found out that one of their friends' parents has a problem, then now I'm nervous to let them go to their house.
Right.
Now I'm nervous to let them ride with them. I'm nervous to do this. So no wonder people are not talking about it, because they're like, if I tell anyone, if anyone finds out that this problem is in my home, it will ruin my life. It will ruin my children's lives. It will make my professional life a disaster. And so the quietness, the hiding from is just unbelievable. It's unlike I've been a social worker for a long time, and I've walked with people who struggle with all different kinds of things. This one is just different than so many of the other things. And so then for somebody in recovery to choose to be loud about that
Yeah.
and to fight back against that and to say, everywhere I go, I'm going to tell people that I'm in recovery from this. I'm going to wear it loudly and proudly. I'm going to share my story every single opportunity I get. What a wonder that is.
Yeah. So we were talking before we started recording about you and making changes in your life because you didn't want to be a stumbling block. Can you describe that a little bit more? Maybe say a little bit more about what a stumbling block is in case someone's listening that
Yeah.
doesn't know that quote from the Bible.
Yeah, so believers constantly will commonly have this conversation that, the choices we're making, the things we're doing, the Bible suggests that, and the gospel suggests that we don't want to be a stumbling block to someone else. So if you're making a choice in sin that causes somebody else to stumble, then you should reevaluate your own choice. Lots of churches use this language about drugs and alcohol. Churches that are on the right side of that and are really, really conservative will immediately say, you should never get into any of that publicly or even in your own home because you would cause somebody else to stumble. You should never make these choices.
Right.
And I identify with you that I don't know that had necessarily felt really heavy to me until I started doing what I do now. And now it feels like more of a serious burden. I'm the only person on the staff of Recovery Bartow that's not in outright recovery from illicit drug use. When I was interviewed for the job, I wasn't even asked any questions about that. But I'd been there about a month, and my husband and I would have before maybe socially drank occasionally or in our home. And I'd been there about a month, and I realized now it feels different, that if someone in our organization who started coming to our Thursday or Friday night meetings and is just past a week or just past a month were to see me out in public drinking, and that made them question our entire organization, all of our staff. Do we mean what we say? That I couldn't even imagine. It wasn't worth that. So it's like literally instantaneous decision to stop.
Which immediately put you in someone else's shoes, and you saw how socially interacting in a way, just how different things were.
Yes, that the drinking is everywhere. It was probably 2 months later, I went to the beach, and I remember standing on the beach and thinking, are there sober people at the beach?
Is there anyone here? Yeah.
And then we talked a little bit about a Christmas party. I got to Christmas parties, and I thought, oh, if you were wondering if you had a problem and you were trying to navigate that, our culture is not designed to make that easy for you. It's
not easy.
Really, really hard. People ask crazy questions. People make big assumptions about why you're not drinking. I've read a fair amount. I shared with you earlier that I read a lot. I've read many, probably even literally dozens of books by people who are in recovery from all kinds of things. And one of them, I'm still fascinated by this, went into a whole chapter about how we've made bars into shrines. And I was reading that, and I was like, he's not wrong. Liquor stores and bars are just like these gorgeous shrine. And I was like, whoa, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
And so, then my kids play ball, and I have something coming up with one of them, and I was like, what will it be like? I mean, I'll be the only person at this event or that event or this thing where I'm not drinking. People even now are inclined to take that as a personal attack. That adds a whole nother level. So you're making this choice for yourself only because you feel like in my shoes, in my life, in this season, this is the decision that makes sense for me. But of course, we've created this culture where I must also be projecting that opinion on everybody else. I mean, we make this kind of assumptions about one another that you must think that your opinion for you also means that I should or shouldn't. It's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, and I think people don't realize that really how difficult it is to stop. Greg, you were talking a little bit before we started recording about a time when you abstained.
Yeah.
Tell us what that was like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I never felt like I had an issue with anything. For me, it was more that my brother did. And my brother's addiction led to him deciding that he didn't want to be alive anymore in 2016. So after that happened, he struggled with addiction for pretty much everything you can think of. So for me, after that, I was like, do I really want to be doing anything right now? And so I took 2 years off. And it really allowed me to kind of have this space in between, because it was like, I was still in my mid-20s. So I was at that crossroads where I'm not really a kid anymore, but I'm not like in my 30s yet. So it allowed me to be able to develop a very healthy relationship with alcohol to where I know exactly what my body wants, not what my mind says it wants. And I think that that's very different. But addiction comes in the form of so many different things. I struggle with eating disorders. So that's an addiction in of itself. And so just like what you were saying about the glamorization of addiction, the media, different industries, they're all doing that. They're all creating these advertisements that, make alcohol look glamorous, make cigarettes and vaping look glamorous, all of these things. And then it just makes people want to kind of go into it because they're capitalizing off of the addiction. And that's the biggest problem that I'm seeing right now.
Absolutely.
How many celebrities have their brand of alcohol, either tequila or whiskey or champagne,
That's right.
and have their own bars that they sell those things in?
Yep.
It's pretty amazing. So thank you, Greg, for sharing that. That I think will probably help someone, hopefully, who's listening. That's my hope, at least. So tell me a little bit about your path in life, because I'm always curious. You've been to seminary, and you did seminary and social work at the same time. Yeah, a lot of people do that. Tell me about that calling and what that was like when you were going through that.
Yeah. So I became a believer when I was 17. So not as a super young child. And I think that when I experienced who Jesus was, I think I was immediately called to ministry. I know I was immediately called to ministry, but there was no women around me who were living that out. So I had no idea what that meant. So I didn't really tell anyone about that. And then I got to college and I saw women campus ministers and I was like, oh, here they are.
It's
this
possible.
is what that is.
They do exist.
And so quickly that translated into like announcement of calling and trying to navigate that. Being in recovery is cool now because you and I talked about this earlier. So I identify as an ally, which means that I have a family member who struggled with addiction. My dad is a Vietnam vet and flew helicopters in Vietnam. And his dad was a World War II vet. And when his dad came back from World War II, he was a hero. And my dad came back from Vietnam and assumed that's how that was going to go. And that is not how that went. And it never went well for him after that. And he lived for another almost exactly 30 years from the day he got back. The week that I graduated from the University of Georgia, I graduated on Saturday, May 11th, and on Monday, May 6th, my dad drank himself to death in a terrible, scary hotel room in Milledgeville, Georgia, about 2 miles from a VA hospital because he had been going back and forth trying to convince them that he needed more help, and they did not believe that he needed more help.
Yeah.
And so he died on Monday, and all of my friends went to his funeral on Thursday, and then I graduated college on Saturday.
Wow.
And so being and he was, in the last 2 years before that, he was homeless on and off because he was so unstable. And so I'm sure that part of the reason I am where I am is because we have to do better. There has to be more help available for people.
Yeah.
Sadly, I think we're beating homelessness, maybe because it's easier for people to wrap their minds around. I'm not sure. But I'm not sure we're doing much better in services available for people who are suffering with drug alcohol use right now than we were 20 years ago when he died.
Yeah.
They're just not. And we really don't know what works well either. That's a whole nother conversation we could have. It's just the struggles in the space of caring for friends who are struggling with addiction and even just trying to figure out what even works.
Well, especially with functional addiction, quote unquote, because it's more or less invisible to the average eye. Right. And so when it's in the homeless community, it's almost like there's the stigma where it's expected, which isn't always true, by the way.
Correct.
But if you're just walking around like everyone else struggling with addiction and it's not visible, then less people will, I guess, take it seriously.
That's right.
Because it doesn't look like addiction or what they perceive to be what addiction looks like.
That's right.
Well, let's pivot just a bit, because I am pretty sure, I don't know what you're going to tell me, but I'm pretty sure you have a good story of holy mischief that probably connects to all of this.
It does. So it attaches right to the story with my dad. I was almost just going to go straight into it, but I'm glad for the segue. So I just told y'all about my dad. So last week on Tuesday, My dad has been gone for 23 years. I just went into the part of life in the last year that he's been gone longer than I knew him to be here. He died when I was 22. It's now been 23 years since then. And so last Tuesday, my sister, I have one sibling, she lives in Lawrenceville. She called. She said, Jessica, you are not going to believe what has just happened. Her mother-in-law lives in this tiny town in South Carolina, and she gets a monthly magazine from her electric co-op. And about a year ago, she got a magazine that was about helicopters, and she thought, oh, I need to send this to my son and grandkids. They love helicopters. I need to send this to them. But she's almost 80, and so it got tucked somewhere in her house. And a year goes by, and it resurfaces, and so she finally gets it to my sister, and like, the kids need to read this article. It's about helicopters. They're going to love that. And my sister starts reading the article, and it is about an organization in Columbia, South Carolina, that works with veterans to continue to do education about helicopters and flight and aviation. And it's a bunch of Vietnam vets who run this organization. And there's a special article coverage inside inside like a 5-page article. There's one page where they interview a guy who's on their board, and he mentions my dad by name in the article.
Wow.
And the magazine survived a year and then got to my sister. And my mother-in-law didn't even realize she hadn't even read the article. She didn't even realize that my dad's name was in there. And so we have an article where the guy who this story is about, who lives in Columbia, South Carolina, was flying in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese were shooting him down, and he refers to my dad flying in and attacking that whole area, and says in the article that he is only alive today because my dad was there.
Wow.
I'd never read anything like that in my whole entire life about my dad ever in the 45 years I've been living. So that night I thought, I'm going to hunt this guy down, or at least try.
Yeah.
And so I Googled the organization. I go to their little contact button on the website, and I hit contact, and I said, I'm trying to find Roger Lone is his name. Y'all had an article about a year ago. He mentions my dad. I'm trying to find him. And 2 days later, he emailed me pictures of my dad.
Wow.
He sent me a picture of my dad in full uniform in live combat that I'd never seen before.
Wow, I have chills.
I actually literally just yesterday, talked to him on the phone for the very first time. I've never in my whole life spoken to anyone who knew my dad when he was in combat.
Wow.
That had never happened before. It's been 23 years. I can't even believe. And the fact that the Lord protected the magazine for a whole year under just this idea that it was about helicopters, and that it found it to my sister, and we found this guy who knew my dad and could tell me stories about him.
Yeah.
Is unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable.
I love it. I love it. Well, we have a tradition where we ask for you to challenge our listeners to one act of holy mischief. What challenge would you give to people listening today?
I'll give you all the same one. So I teach Sunday school,
Uh-huh.
high school girls on Sundays. That's one of my other big pieces of life. And I was talking with them day before yesterday because school's starting.
Mm-hmm.
And they, of course, were expressing all kind of big goals about being very bold at school with friends.
Uh-huh.
Of course they were. And then I kept listening to various parts of the conversation and reminded them that another girl made a different comment about kind of goals about that. And I said, let me connect a few dots for y'all. And I said, the truth is, I love these ideas you have about being very bold at your school. Yes, I'm not trying to discourage you. Do the thing. I said, but what's more true is that the friends at your school that are struggling the hardest, all they actually need is for somebody to say, hey, how's it going?
So ask, how's it going? And then listen.
Yeah.
Not listen to respond, just listen. That's a big theme in the first third of Deuteronomy. And it's really a big theme in the entire Bible, but listen and love. I love it. I have a gift for you today, Jessica. You are a Holy Mischief maker, so I have a Holy Mischief button for you. And then I have a couple of cards. One is for you to keep, and one is for you to give away. It has the info about the Holy Mischief podcast, but when you give it to people at Noble in Maine, you can have a free coffee on us. We're so thankful that you were here to share with us today. And as always, it's a joy to get to know you, and I hope that people will take up your Holy Mischief challenge.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's dose of hope and holy mischief. A big thank you to Trinity United Methodist Church for sponsoring this podcast and supporting stories that uplift our community. Until next time, keep spreading kindness and making a difference. And remember, God loves you, and so do I.